The snow had started before sunset, the quiet kind that didn't scream, but settled into everything, covering the Wyoming plains like a held breath. The ranch sat miles from the nearest town, a spread of land so wide it felt like it belonged to the sky more than to any man. Smoke rose thinly from the main house chimney. But far behind the barn, near the old fire pit where cowhands once warmed their hands during cattle drives long past, a woman sat alone. Her name was Clara Whitmore, though no one here knew it yet. She pulled her coat tighter around her thin frame, fingers stiff with cold, stomach aching in a way that had nothing to do with the winter air. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. The small loaf of bread she'd carried from the train station was gone, rationed into careful bites that still hadn't been enough. Hunger had become a dull companion by now, a hollow pressure beneath her ribs that made her light-headed when she stood. The fire pit crackled weakly. The wood was damp, and she didn't know how to coax it properly. She wasn't a frontier woman. She wasn't even sure she was brave. But desperation had a way of dragging people farther than courage ever could. She had arrived at the ranch just before dusk, escorted by a ranch hand who'd said little more than her name, and then left her there with a nod that felt more like dismissal than welcome. "Boss will talk to you later," he'd muttered, already walking away. No supper, no room shown, just the fire pit and the instruction to wait. So she waited. Her boots were worn thin from travel, the soles patched twice over. Her dress, once pale blue, was faded to near gray, sleeves mended at the elbows. She had brushed her hair before the journey, but the wind had tangled it again, brown strands escaping the loose braid down her back. She looked like what she was, a woman who'd run out of options. The letter folded carefully inside her coat pocket felt heavier with every passing hour. She hadn't wanted to answer it. A mail-order bride advertisement felt like the last rung on a ladder already breaking beneath her feet. But after her father died, and the boarding house shut its doors after the factory job disappeared and winter came early, pride stopped feeding her. Survival did. The letter had been short, direct. No poetry, no promises of love, just land work, marriage. Signed simply, Eli Morgan, Morgan Ranch, Wyoming Territory. She'd imagined many things about him during the long train ride west. A grizzled old man, a cruel one, maybe a lonely widower hour with too many children and a temper to match the winters. She told herself she could endure anything if it meant warmth and food and a place to belong. But sitting here now, shivering beside a dying fire, she wondered if she'd misjudged everything. The main house lights glowed faintly through the trees, distant and unreachable. Laughter drifted once, briefly, carried by the wind. Men eating, maybe warming themselves indoors. The sound cut deeper than the cold. Her stomach twisted hard enough that she had to bend forward, arms wrapped around herself. She pressed her forehead against her knees and breathed slowly, fighting the wave of dizziness. "Just get through the night," she whispered to herself. Just one night. Footsteps crunched behind her. She stiffened, heart jumping into her throat. For a moment, she didn't move, afraid that if she looked up, she'd see disappointment written on someone's face, or worse, nothing at all. The man stopped a few feet away. She could feel his presence before she saw him, solid and quiet like the land itself. "Why are you out here?" he asked. His voice wasn't raised. It wasn't angry. It was low, steady, edged with something unreadable. Clara pushed herself upright, wincing as the cold air hit her face. She turned slowly. He stood tall, broad-shouldered, coat dusted with snow, hat pulled low over dark eyes that studied her without softness, but without cruelty either. His jaw was rough with stubble, his mouth set in a straight line that looked more used to silence than conversation. "I was told to wait," she said. Her voice came out thinner than she wanted. He glanced at the fire pit, the meager flames, the way she hovered close to it. Then his gaze dropped to her hands, red, trembling, and finally to her face. Her cheeks were hollow, eyes too bright. "How long you been here?" he asked. She hesitated. "Since before sundown?" His jaw tightened just a fraction. "And you've eaten?" he asked. She swallowed. Lying felt pointless. "No, sir." For a long moment, he said nothing. The wind hissed through the trees, scattering sparks from the fire. "You the woman from the letter?" he asked. "Yes," she said quietly. "Clara Whitmore?" He nodded once. "Eli Morgan." So this was him. Up close, he wasn't what she'd imagined. He looked younger than she'd feared, older than she'd hoped. Lines at the corners of his eyes spoke of years spent squinting into sun and snow. There was strength in him, but also distance, as if life had taught him to keep things at arm's length. "You shouldn't be out here," he said finally. "I didn't want to be troubled," she replied. "I can wait." Something flickered across his face. Then surprise maybe, or regret. "You don't wait hungry on my land," he said. She wasn't sure how to respond. Apologies crowded her tongue, but he spoke again before she could choose one. "Get up," he said. She flinched slightly at the firmness of it, scrambling to her feet despite the dizziness that washed over her. "You're coming home?" he added. For a second, she thought she'd misheard him. "Sir?" she asked. He didn't repeat himself. He turned and started toward the house, already assuming she'd follow. She did, though her legs felt unsteady, each step an effort. The warmth from the house grew with every yard, carrying the smell of cooked meat and bread that made her stomach ache sharply. Inside the house was larger than she expected, but plainly furnished. A long table dominated the main room, half cleared of dishes. The men who'd been eating glanced up in surprise as Eli entered with a woman none of them recognized. "That'll be all?" Eli said to them. They didn't argue. Chairs scraped back, boots thudded toward the door. A few curious looks were cast her way, but no one spoke. When they were alone, Eli hung his coat, then turned to her. "You can sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. She obeyed, lowering herself carefully. The warmth hit her all at once, making her hands shake harder now that she wasn't fighting the cold. Eli moved to the stove, lifting lids, checking pots. He didn't ask questions right away. He filled a bowl with stew thick with potatoes and meat and set it in front of her along with a piece of bread. "Eat," he said. She stared at the bowl for a moment, overwhelmed. Then she picked up the spoon with hands that trembled too much to hide. She ate slowly at first, afraid of being rude, afraid it might disappear if she moved too fast. The warmth spread through her chest with every bite, easing something tight and painful she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Eli watched her from across the table, saying nothing. When she finished, she set the spoon down carefully. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "You got a long journey?" "Yes." "You come alone?" "Yes." Another pause. "This arrangement," he said finally. "You know what it is?" "Yes," she replied. "Marriage, work, a home." "And you still came," he said. She met his gaze steady despite her exhaustion. "I didn't have anywhere else to go." The honesty seemed to settle between them. Heavy, but real. He stood then, pushing his chair back. "You'll stay in the spare room tonight," he said. "We'll talk more tomorrow." Relief washed through her so strongly it made her eyes sting. "Thank you," she said again. He hesitated at the doorway, hand on the frame. "One more thing," he said. She looked up. "You don't sleep hungry here," he repeated. "Not tonight. Not ever." Something in his voice made her chest ache. Not kindness exactly, but something hard-earned, like a rule carved out of past mistakes. He turned away then, leaving her alone in the warmth, the fire crackling, steady and strong. This time, Clara sat there for a long moment after he left, staring at the empty bowl, trying to understand how a single sentence, "You're coming home," had shifted the ground beneath her feet so completely. She didn't know yet that the hardest parts were still ahead, and she didn't see the look Eli wore as he stood alone in the hallway, staring at the closed door, wondering what he had just invited into his life. Eli Morgan stood alone in the hallway long after the house had gone quiet, the sounds of the ranch settling into night, wrapping around him like a familiar weight. The wind rattled the windows, snow tapping against the glass as if asking to be let in. He didn't move at first. His hand rested against the wooden frame, fingers rough and scarred from years of work, gripping harder than necessary. He hadn't planned for this. A mail-order bride had seemed like a practical solution when the letter was written months ago. Something clean, something simple. The ranch needed a woman's hand. He needed an arrangement that didn't involve promises he wasn't sure he could keep. But practicality had never included a woman sitting hungry by a fire pit on Christmas Eve, eyes too tired for her age. He exhaled slowly and turned away, walking down the hall to his room. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Clara lay awake in the spare room, staring at the ceiling where shadows from the fire danced softly. The bed was real. Thick mattress, warm blankets, a pillow that smelled faintly of soap. Luxury compared to what she'd known lately. Yet her body, so used to cold floors and hard benches, stayed tense. Every creak of the house made her heart jump. She replayed the evening over and over. His voice, the way he'd looked at her hands, the firm certainty in his words when he told her she was coming home. She didn't know whether to trust it. Trust had not been kind to her before. Still, warmth seeped into her bones, and exhaustion claimed her before fear could pull her back under. Morning came slow and pale, the world outside buried beneath fresh snow. Clara woke to the sound of movement somewhere in the house. The low thud of boots, the clink of a kettle. For a moment, panic rose sharp and sudden. Then she remembered where she was. She dressed carefully, smoothing her skirt, braiding her hair with hands that still felt slightly unsteady. When she stepped into the kitchen, Eli was already there, pouring coffee into a mug. "Morning," he said. "Me morning," she replied. Breakfast was simple: eggs, bread, a slab of salt pork, but it was hot and there was enough. He didn't watch her eat this time, only slid the plate toward her and returned to his own meal. Afterward, he leaned back in his chair. "We need to talk." Her spine straightened. "Yes, this marriage," he said. "It's not a fairy tale. You work here. You earn your keep, same as anyone. In return, you get a roof, food, and protection. You understand?" "Yes," she said quickly. "I didn't come expecting more." He studied her for a long moment. "I won't force you into anything," he added. "Not now, not ever." The words settled over her like a fragile blanket. "Thank you," she said softly. The days that followed settled into a... Clara moved through each day in a careful, steady rhythm. She learned the house, the ranch, and the unspoken rules that shaped life there. She cooked the meals, scrubbed the floors, patched torn shirts, and mastered the art of keeping the fire burning just right. Her hands stopped shaking. Color slowly returned to her cheeks. At first, the ranch hands watched her with quiet curiosity. Over time, that curiosity softened into acceptance. She worked without complaint, never asking for more than she was offered. Eli noticed it all, though he rarely said a word. Christmas came and went without fuss. No tree, no songs, just a simple meal shared in the steady warmth of the house. For Clara, it was more than she had ever expected. Winter tightened its grip. Weeks later, a storm swept in hard and fast. The wind howled like something alive, snow stacking high against the doors. Eli came in after dark, his face tense from the cold. "Fence is down near the cattle," he said. "I'll mend it at first light." "You'll freeze," Clara said before she could stop herself. He looked at her, surprised, almost amused. "I've been cold for a long time." That night, sleep wouldn't come. Old memories returned, the boarding house shutting its doors, the ache of hunger, the letters she had sent like a desperate wager against fate. She rose quietly, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, and found Eli sitting at the table, staring into a cup of coffee gone cold. "You all right?" she asked. He hesitated before answering. "My wife passed during winter, years ago." The words settled heavily between them. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered. "So am I," he replied. "That's why I keep life simple." She nodded, understanding more than he realized. Spring arrived late, but when it came strong. Snow melted into thick mud, the fields softened, life pressed forward against the memory of frost. Clara began to laugh more often. Eli found himself waiting to hear it. They didn't hurry toward marriage, but one quiet morning it happened. Papers signed at the town office. No ceremony, no kiss. Just a shared decision. After that, things shifted in small ways. Clara's room became their room. At night, a respectful space remained between them, neither daring to cross it. In that space, something steady and strong began to grow. Trouble came as it always does, sudden and sharp. A neighboring rancher accused Eli of crossing property lines. Voices rose, threats followed. One evening, gunshots cracked near the barn. No one was injured, but fear settled deep. When Eli suggested she stay in town for safety, Clara stood firm. "This is my home," she said. "I won't run again." Something changed in that moment. The conflict eventually cooled without bloodshed, though tension lingered. Through it all, Clara stayed. Eli saw her strength, her quiet, unwavering courage. Months after she had first arrived, thin, hungry, and shivering beside the fire pit, Eli returned home late one evening to find Clara waiting up for him, worry plain on her face. "You're safe," she said, relief filling her voice. He looked at her then, truly looked, and understood what had grown between them without either speaking its name. "Clara," he began. She stepped closer. "Yes?" "I don't know how to be good at this," he admitted, "but I want to try." She reached for his hand, hesitant yet certain. "So do I." Outside, the fire pit burned bright against the night. It was no longer a place of waiting, but of warmth. And for the first time in a long while, neither of them felt alone.